wasn't a whole lot left other than the routing. And it was kind of stunning to me. You know, it really was kind of a Dick Wilson course on a Donald Ross routing. The story goes, and even from Mr. Nicklaus, the story goes that he was only supposed to touch a couple greens and elevate a couple of the holes in the lower ground, but ended up transforming all of the green pads. And so they brought dirt in from the State House and elevated all of the greens and ended up with, you know, these kind of triangular shaped putting surfaces with bunkers front right and front left, you know, very post-war kind of architecture. And so when I got here and saw that, it was so repetitive. It just, one of the ways I convinced the members to at least open their mind to it was I put a picture of every approach shot on the front nine on a PowerPoint slide. And I put pictures of every approach shot on the second nine on a PowerPoint slide. And I did them back to back. And when you started to look at all 18 greens, there was a lot of repetition. It was so clear. In fact, it was hard for me at times to even know which green, like if I got the greens out of order, because the bunkers were so dominant on the front corners of the putting surfaces. So the game had become very aerial. And when you look again back to the dodo bird and look to some of the original concepts, there's such great variety of the putting surfaces, their shapes, the contours, you know, all these things that just make golf better. It really started to become this process of compiling all the information for each golf hole, putting it in front of me, and trying to piece together how does it best fit the modern game. And so some of the green contours, some of the things like the ocean waves on 5, some amazing contours, great pictures from near the opening. You know, some of it, probably if we put it back exactly the way it was, we'd never be able to putt on them. But that inspiration was very important to reconnect to. Some of the green shapes are crazy, interesting and unique. No circles at all. They all have very intricate kind of details to them. Some of the bunker positions are interesting and unique. You know, the 14th hole comes to mind, just the combination of bunkers that are sitting on the ground there. And then these wicked Ross hummocks or mounds that were all over, you know, the dodo bird cartoon. And what did those represent? And when you started to look at some of the pictures from the ground, like on holes like 9, 2, 15, you know, they're bold. They were significant. And it just started to speak to this idea of, you know, kind of a more Victorian picture of the way the golf course presented itself. And just this uniqueness to where they weren't moving dirt long distances. It was whatever was left was utilized in these unique ways. When we talked about this idea that the restored Scioto was going to have these unique features and things no one else has, it was important to me that we explored the entire game of golf. So every shot that we could recreate, every shot that we could have the player think about or face was important. So then the greens started to carry that same idea, that each one would have kind of its own unique challenge. And that way you never felt like you were playing the same hole twice. And that from day to day, depending on the hole locations, the golf course is totally different. And then we really worked to simplify the landscape. Anything that had been bulldozered, had been manufactured, we tried to really soften, return the ground really to this beautiful rolling terrain. One of the things we did here is we built the greens to finish grade first. So we would go into a green pad and take basically the Dick Wilson green and kind of just undo it, demo it. And then we'd pick a point of where we felt like the natural approach grade fit. And we'd start to shape the new green, that's supposed to be an old green, back on the ground. And so try to really visualize, okay, if Ross only had this little knoll, and he kind of knocked down the top, spread that dirt out, cut the bunkers in, picked that dirt up. How did the green end up sitting on the ground? And we'd get the dirt that way, we'd massage it until we were happy, and then we scanned it and cored it out and built a USGA green after the fact. So it really allowed the greens to sit on the ground nicely. A big selling point for me was to reconnect to the ground and the ground game. So you're going to see approaches that have some nice width and have some variety and allow a player to bounce the ball in. Width is by far the most underrated thing in the game of golf. Anything you can do to generate width is great. And because when you start to take that width and drape it over contours, you start to see more than just one little image, right? And so one of the big things we did on 2 and 6 was to connect the fairways. And so you can really see the hogs back on 2, this beautiful swale in between 2 and 6, and then the twist and turn of the 6th hole. That was huge. Some of the connections from tee to green, your immediate introduction to the golf course when you walk onto the first tee connected to the putting green to 10, and the drop off as it flows through the property. It speaks to that, the changes in topography and the qualities that the golf course has. When you get a valley kind of piece of property, you can look at it a lot of different ways, right? You could do like the Huntington Valley, outer and inner. Ross did a really cool job here of kind of taking one section, playing out and around, kind of coming back across, and then taking the second 9 and kind of in a different way, different kind of mindset, but getting to use the same, over and through the valley in different ways in kind of that second loop. From the get-go, we talked about pursuing the highest ideal, and the highest ideal being connecting to the roots of the property, to the original golf course that hosted Bobby Jones' victory in '26, and the unique things that brought about. And with that, we talked about reintroducing the ground game, allowing members to bounce the ball in or fly it, depending on how they wanted to play. Have tremendous variety, be able to play the golf course day in and day out, have it play in a multitude of ways. When you started to look at the history and the dodo bird, this image, this cartoon that they had from '26, I just saw things in that no one else had. And I told the group, I remember very clearly on a phone call, as we were kind of talking through the process, I said, Scioto deserves this. The uniqueness of what Ross originally did was just spectacular. And it showcased this amazing routing and the gorgeous piece of ground that has this nice combination of rolling features and a little bit of dramatic elevation change. And then I just think Ross did such a good job of mixing up which direction you played over that ground. So that brings it all together.